Once again, welcome everybody to today's Flourish webinar. Today we're going to be talking about unlocking elections insights with data visualization. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining from all over the world, literally. My name is Mafe and I'm a data visualization specialist, and I'm joined today by my colleague Vanessa, also a data viz specialist, and we're going to be your hosts today. We're going to be walking you through all the wonders of doing data visualization, specifically for elections in quite a pivotal year for elections. Now, before we get started, if this is your first time attending a Flourish webinar, just a little bit of housekeeping. So please ask any questions through the chat, not through the Q&A. Vanessa and I are going to be monitoring this through the session, but bear with us because obviously we also have to present and screen share, and there's a lot of BTS going on. So we'll go through the questions as we can. And if we skip one, in the end, we're going to share resources. So don't worry at all. The session is recorded. We're going to share the recording as well as the slides by the end of the week, roughly. You can go to our webinar page if you want to know about any previous sessions and catch the recordings to any other webinars we've ever done, or if you want to learn about upcoming sessions. You can sign up to our newsletter to get email notifications. And if you have any feedback at all about our sessions, please fill our survey so we can improve and cater to your needs and wants. Now, in the next hour, we're going to be covering quite a lot of ground, so you're in for a jam-packed session. First, we're going to be talking about visualizing election results. So this is Parliament charts, election results template, and a results table. Then it's visualizing elections on maps. We're going to be covering colored regions, symbol maps, hex maps, and how you can upload your own regions to a Flourish template. Then we're going to be covering what happens before the election by visualizing polling data with line charts, gauges, and scatters. And we're going to show you how to build stories and scrollies with Flourish with your elections charts. And if we have time after all of that, we have some extras to show you. But let's get started. So as I said at the beginning, 2024 is huge for elections, right? We have almost half of the world population voting. I believe there are over, depending on sources, like between 40 and 70 elections or general elections happening. So probably someone you know, or even yourself, are going to be heading to the polls. And if we know anything, is that elections generate lots of data. And we get to say it visualized in ways like we can see on the screen. We can visualize polls by doing charts like this one in the corner, line charts with different individual pollings. We can also visualize the distribution of results with B-swarms, Sankey's for the flow of seats, normal results with maps, scatter plots, you name it. Elections are an extremely rich format to visualize with data. And we're going to be showing you how you can do that with Flourish in this session. So to get started, handing over to Vanessa.
Thank you very much. Let's get started with election results first. So how to best visualize election results with Flourish. And as you know, election results are more than just numbers. They're stories of communities and change. And Flourish helps you to turn these stories into engaging visuals with our no-code templates. And we take a closer look in the next few minutes at these 3 specific templates, and 2 of these are just like specific for elections. So we have the Parliament chart template up first. It's a very common way to visualize election results. And as you can see, the shape of the chart is similar to a Parliament layout, and therefore it makes it ideal to visualize seats held by each political party. And as I will show you in a minute, all you need is a data set with parties and their seat numbers. And you can also adjust, like there are so many customization options, like you can adjust the number of seats, you can add a table, you can have custom colors and all of this. And because it's just easier if I just show you, I will do that. So if you're in your projects page, the way to create a new Parliament chart is if you select new visualization, and then you have to scroll down quite a bit. And here, the Parliament chart is here in the corner. At the moment, we have 2 starting points. So one is just like some made up parties, and the other one is the EU Parliament. But I've created an example around the House of Commons Parliament, just to step you through some important parts of the template. So as you can see, each dot stands for 1 seat, and they're also colored by the parties. And which is really nice about the template is that if you hover over a section, it shows you in the middle the number of seats that this party has, and it also highlights it, which works like this, which is really nice. We have a legend at the bottom. And the best thing is as well that the data structure behind this is really easy. If we go to the data tab here, we just have one column that contains all the parties we have. And then for each of them, we have the number of seats they had in a year. So for this one, we have two different sets of elections. So we have 2019 as one column and 2017. We can also decide to just have one, so just the most recent one. We can also add 5 more elections in the past. That is fully up to you, but then you don't need anything else data-wise, which is really nice. And then, as you've seen, we have data for 2019 and 2017. So you have this filter at the top where you can show how the seats have changed with this animation here as well, where you can also control the speed as well. So yeah, we can see how the seats have changed. Just a few basics about the parliament layout. The number of seats. So as you can see here, I've put down 150 seats, but obviously there are more than 150 seats. So if you put a lower number, it will just be ignored and will automatically add as many dots as there are seats. But then if, for example, your parliament originally has 800 seats, then it will add some seats and they will be kept blank. For example, if your parliament has more seats, but they're not all filled, then they will just be represented by this. But then if I go back and go to 100, it will show the number of seats from the data tab. There are also other things where you can change the inner space, just personal preference. You can change the number of rows until it kind of just looks how you want it to look. So there are some customization options. For the colors as well, the way I did it in this chart is that I used color overrides. So you have the party name and then you have your hex code. You could also type it in like this and then they would be pink. So this is how it works. And then the other thing that is nice about this template is that you have the option to show a table underneath. So this one would then show for each party the seats in 2019 and 2017, and also automatically calculates the seat change and then colors as either red or green and adds an arrow at the front, at the beginning, which is really nice as well to just for if you want to show the changes specifically. And yeah, you can decide if you want to show the table or not and customize what it says in the table as well. So these are the main settings to consider for the Parliament chart. And we also have a blog just about Parliament charts, which you find in the resources as well. And there you have a cards viz that I put into these slides as well. So if you have when you have access to the slides, you can have a look at these as well, just to have some starting points if you need some inspiration and to look at how the starting points maybe are different if the Parliament is different, and you can just click on the link and duplicate and edit them and then get started. And next up is the election results chart template, which is a simple and effective way to visualize election outcomes. This is the second of our templates that are just focused especially on elections. And again, it displays the number of seats each party has won. And again, it's also using different colors for easy identification. And what is also nice about this template, which I show you in action again, is that it will automatically calculate the changes in seat distribution if you put data for 2 different years in. So like the Parliament chart in the table calculated the seat change itself as well. This one will do the same. So let me just show you. And then if you create a new template, the election results one is here. We have one starting point at the moment. And again, I've prepared this example here. And also when you have the slides, you can, if you click here on duplicate the charts and the data, you will have access to the starting point and can just play around with the template yourself. Again, this one looks a bit like a stacked bar chart showing all the different parties. And for the UK 2019 general election results, as you can see, again, it uses the same color overrides over here. So that also to make sure that the colors always match across all your visualizations. So definitely always recommend using the custom overrides for this. And what you can see here, or if you go to the data tab in the background, is that you have a breakdown or like a country. So you can also have multiple countries, but if you just have one, you just have one row for the UK. And then in this one, the data structure is wide. So you have every party is a row. And then you have this is the vote share in this election for that latest year, which was 2019 in this case. And then the other one, you have a tab here for historical data, which you don't have to use, but then it's kind of nice if you want to show the change to the previous election. And this one just follows exactly the same structure, just that the values would be different because you would take them from the previous elections. And what this does is that, as you can see here, it automatically calculates the change. So the Conservatives got 43.6% of votes in 2019, which is a change of 1.33 percentage points from the election before. So you don't need to calculate this yourself. The template automatically does it. It shows up in the pop-up, it shows up here, and that's the main thing that's very good about this template. And that's the main thing. The other thing you can customize is that you can add in this threshold line here, which we've set to 50%. And just to quickly, you can have multiple countries as well. So we could say we add in England, and then I just make up some percentages just to show. Oh yeah, should probably do the same for the current data as well. And then you will notice, if I refresh the page, that there's a drop down at the top now where you can swap between UK and England, and then you could have different countries. For example, if it's about the EU election coming up from different countries, and then it also animates between the two. So that's the drop down at the top. So yeah, that's about the election charts template that we have. And thirdly, we have our table template, because in any election, people want to know what the results are where they live. And using our table template, you can make the election results more accessible to everyone by creating a searchable database. So people can easily locate their constituency, for example, or their area, region, and view the winning party, vote share, and change since the last election. So if we go into this example, you have all the constituencies in England with the results from the UK 2019 general election. And you can either like go through the different pages, or you can also say we're interested in London, and then it will show all the ones that are in London, in the region, in the greater or in the authority. Or you can also say, I just want to see cities of London and Westminster, and then you can filter for the results that are most relevant to you. And also another like nice tip is that you can upload the party logos and also add mini bar charts to make it more visually appealing. And yeah, this is everything about the templates to visualize election results. And now that we've already been talking about the geographical breakdown, this brings us automatically to using maps in your election coverage, which Martha will tell you more about.
Yes, well, Vanessa is bringing us to a really exciting topic, which is visualizing elections in maps. And I guess the first question is, why would you want to do it? Or, well, in my opinion, why would you not? And it's because maps provide a geographic context that is super key in elections. They show us where votes are distributed, and they highlight spatial relationships between regions. So they're really a really useful tool for elections. In this session, I'm going to be covering these specific 3 maps. Obviously, there are many options you can create, but I'm going to be focusing on colored regions categorically, which is best for results by party. Then we have the color regions numerical, which is best for comparison between regions, and the proportional symbol map, which is amazing to highlight patterns. Now, let's take a look into each one separately. For the color regions categorical, the pros is that you're able to spot regional patterns quite easily. It is intuitive and really easy to understand because most people have seen this type of map in their own election coverage, like their local elections or their national elections, and they're pretty much the standard way of showing electoral results. However, one con that is quite important to keep in mind is that these are skewed toward bigger regions. And what I mean by that is that visually, areas that are bigger and are colored by any hue are going to draw the attention, and they're going to draw the eye. So in this particular map, we're visualizing the 2020 election results in the United States. And you can see how there's a lot of red in the map, which automatically would lead us to think that the Republican Party did astoundingly well. However, we know that Democrats actually won. So this is a really good example to understand how there's this little play into the eye that can actually affect how people interpret data. Now, the second map type would be the color regions numerical, in which instead of using a category, we're actually plotting numbers into each separate region and coloring by that. In this case, we're doing a diverging map showing margin of victory. So the darker the county, the higher the proportion of votes that went to the winning candidate, or rather to each of the candidates. Red for Republican and blue for Democrat, of course. And the pros of this type of map is that they allow to show more complex patterns, they put numbers in a geographical context, and they can hold more data than, say, simply a categorical map. However, they are a bit harder to understand by general audiences, so you may have to do a little bit of hand-holding or just simply put an explainer, maybe in the footer, maybe in your own text. And they could be deceiving when used wrong because people are not too familiar with them. So please do keep this in mind when you're creating your own charts. Then we have the proportional symbol map. Huge pros is that it shows density and magnitude. Because of all the icons clustering and sizing, you're able to identify patterns that with the color regions are not possible. You're able to reveal clusters and other patterns, as I mentioned. You can contextualize values with a spatial dimension, and you can use different symbols to reveal different patterns. In Flourish, we have circles, spikes, and arrows, and you can swap between the three types to show your data in different ways. Couple of cons to keep in mind is that comparing values can be a tad difficult because obviously they overlap and we're not quite good into, for instance, interpreting the difference between this area and this area. And once again, it can be too cluttered too easily. So it's all to keep in mind whenever choosing the right map for your visualization. Now, bonus map types are the hex map and the extruded regions map. The hex map, it's amazing when you're trying to equalize regions by their value in elections. So in the case of the states, to keep with the same example, we know that states vote by the number of seats they have in the electoral college, meaning that, to put it plainly, not all states are created equal, and some states hold a bit more weight in the elections than others. So hex maps are a great way to equalize the regions and show them weighted. The reason why they're not on the main three chart types, even though they're super popular, it's because creating hex maps is not super easy. Not all countries have a system that translates nicely into hex maps. Not all countries have starting points. So in Flourish, we have starting points for the US and the UK. So it's something to keep in mind, definitely. And then we have extruded regions maps where instead of plotting numbers into, for instance, a color or a shape, we actually elevate the region using 3D technology to have the height of the region matching the number. So this can be an interesting way to showcase, in this case, the number of votes per county. And you can see how, even though there's an overwhelming area of counties that voted for Republicans, the counties that voted for Democrats are actually more populated, and you can compare values this way. This is good for complex analysis, but it might be a bit complicated for audiences who are not maybe too initiated into data visualization. So once again, something to keep in mind. But now let's go into Flourish and take a look at that. Everything I'm going to be showing you is in the link in the slides. And when you have access to them, you're going to be able to duplicate it and access all the examples that I'm just going to show you right now. So I have a nice and neat empty county map of the US, and I'm going to be plotting 2020 presidential election results in the three key maps that I showed you. If you've never used any of the Flourish maps, you have the preview, and then you have your data tab as with any other Flourish template. And then in the data tab, it might look a bit different from the other templates because we have different tabs. We have a tab region that is plotting the data for the color of the regions. Then we have regions geometry, which is just giving us the shape of the map. We have points. So this is where you put the data that's going to be fitting into the points. And lines is for any additional element. And you can see that this one's empty, so nothing to see here for now. If I go into regions and I color by, in this case, the winning party, I'm going to say H. and I go back, we already have our first map type, which is a categorically colored map. And once again, I have all my counties colored by the winning party, and I have my pop-up establishing the winner, and I have my legend right here, which is crucial for making sure that people understand the election results. Now, going back into the same sheet, so the regions sheet, I can change my color by column to plot a number, and then we would turn this map into a colored, a region color number map, or rather a color map by numerical values. If I change this to P, there we go, and I'm back into my map. We transform that into a categorical map to a numerical one. And as I explained earlier, this is showing the margin of victory for each of the counties. And a couple of things to keep in mind here, if I go into my regions layer, is that this is using a diverging color scale because I'm plotting the values based on the winning party. So we have values for Republicans and values for Democrats. So we needed the spectrum. If I were to switch this to sequential, the map would look different, as it would go over the smallest value and then the largest value. Diverging scales work really well when you have a natural zero in your data, which can be, in this case, it would be a 50-50. So the zero in this map is explaining or showing any counties that had a very, very close call in the election, where, for instance, they voted 50% for Democrats and 50% for Republicans. And obviously here are other settings, such as changing the minimum color into any shade that you want. It can be a different one. I'm just gonna keep my bright red, your maximum as well. But we don't have a lot of time to go into all the specific. We have a lot of resources on how you can recreate this map, however. So we are linking to those further into the slides. Now, if I did not want to have a colored region map, but rather a proportional symbol map, all I need to go is go to my points, and I already have my data prepped for this. So for this, you would need a latitude column and a longitude column to actually position the symbols on the map. You can have a color for the categories if you wanted to color differently, and you can have a color for the size if you wanted to size your points or spikes by a specific value. So in this case, once I plot the latitude, there we go. I have all my points correctly distributed on my map. I have my two legends, one for the categories, so I know that red represents the Republicans and blue the Democrats, and I have my size legends to understand what the size of the bubble is telling me. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this can look a bit cluttered and maybe bubbles is not what you're after, in which case you can go to the points layer and you can select between our three symbols, circle, spike, and arrow. So if I go to spike, we get rid of the circles and we have this neat little triangles that almost make some of the areas look like little mountain ranges. So this is a bit clearer in terms of what we're seeing, which is that the Republican counties were actually lower in population. And even though there are many of those, population is concentrated in counties that voted for the Democrats, explaining the 2020 win. You can also use the arrow symbol. In this example, you're not going to see the benefit of it, but if you were to show the swing between counties, so counties or states, so which state voted Republican or which state voted Democrat in one election and the next, then these arrows would go into opposite directions, showing the flow, which is quite a nice detail that we offer at Flourish. Now, all of these resources are going to be in this table right here, and you can explore them, explore the data, duplicate them by hitting this button, duplicate and edit. And it's going to ask you if you want to do that. And if you do want to duplicate it and edit, then you hit that button and you're going to get a copy of the story and all the examples in your Flourish account. Now, even though we do our very best to give you an offer every single country in the world with all the divisions, that's quite impossible. But we, however, do give you the option to upload your very own GeoJSON, your very own custom regions to Flourish templates. So you're able to visualize any and all elections in the world. Now, this is done in 3 simple steps. First, you need to find a GeoJSON file, and GeoJSON is simply the type of file that you need. It's like saying a CSV or a PowerPoint or a Excel. It's just the type of file. So don't get too caught up in that. I know it can be a bit intimidating, but it's super easy. Then you need to upload your file to Flourish. And last but not least, you merge your data and you edit. And we're linking to all the resources that are going to help you achieve just that. Now, luckily, we do have a repository with a bunch of resources on GeoJSONs that are ready to go for you to upload into Flourish. So do go to the link in the slides. If you are looking for a region, you don't find it in the template chooser, and you maybe can find it here. However, if it's not there, then you can follow the steps that I outlined earlier, but this can be the first port of call for sure. Now, let's take a look at why you may want to do this, or the benefits of uploading your own custom GeoJSONs, and one can be to create layer maps. So in this example, we have a map of the European Union where I've split Germany into its regions, and then I'm plotting population. So the benefit is that we have specific country shapes for all the countries, but then we have a subdivision for Germany. So it's a really nice thing that you maybe want to do for elections, perhaps to showcase results in different areas, or maybe you want to just like highlight a specific country and not highlight the others, and this can be a very neat way to do so. And let's take a look at how that works. So if I'm back into Flourish, first I would have perfect. So this is the basic map of the EU that you can find even in our resources, in our template chooser. And I'm gonna go into the data now. So before I showed you regions, points, and lines, but we're gonna focus on regions geometry here. So if you've never took a look into this whenever you're creating maps, or if it's your first time creating maps, you're gonna notice that we have a geometry column with some funky looking dark shapes here. This is the data that is actually giving us the shape of each of the countries. If I double click on one of them, I'm gonna get lots of coordinates that are actually drawing the shape of the country on the map. That's how it works. So the challenge here is to bring data into this sheet that can create that layer version of the map. So first, we need to locate Germany. And Germany is right here. We can see it with all the information. And here it is in our map. So for argument's sake, if I were to delete it and I go back into my preview, this has disappeared, right? So now you understand that this sheet is very easy to manipulate. It's very easy to play around with, and it's going to be the one connecting all your information into your data and your final visualization. Now, here I have an empty map that you can find in the template chooser in Flourish, and there's nothing in here. The regions geometry are empty, my regions are empty, and I'm going to upload my file of Germany that I've sourced through Eurostat. So if I go to my data and upload my GeoJSON, import, continue, we have a file that looks exactly like we saw here with Europe, but this is specifically for the regions in Germany. And we get questions a lot around where to source file, what's the best source for them, where to find them. Answer is really whatever you consider to be best. In this case, I use Eurostat, but you can look into national files, you can look into repositories, or crowdsourced material. Really depends on you and what you need. But if we were to cover that, we would never finish the session. So we have to be quite quick here. But in any case, we have our geometry, we have our IDs, and other information like the name of each of these regions. So we don't see anything here in our preview. And actually, if I go there, there's not going to be anything because I have not yet plotted any regions into Flourish. To do that, I need to find a common file, or rather a common column that speaks between the regions geometry and the regions sheet. And it can be as simple as copying this ID column here and pasting it right here. And we can see that something's happening, and this has been automatically bound into the ID column, which needs to be the same here as it is in the regions geometry. So if we take a look at that, we already have our regions. And even further, if I were to add the names here, regions geometry, copy and paste. And then I have my name for B. And maybe pop-ups. There we go. So now the challenge is to bring all these regions into our map. Now, in reality, you're going to find a lot of mismatches and dirty files, and you're going to have to do a lot of copy and pasting, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to show you exactly how I would approach this, this little project, let's say. So I'm going to go to my regions geometry for my big European file, and I'm going to delete Germany. So now I have a blank space at the bottom. I'm going to go into my maps, and I know I have 39 empty regions. So let me just add maybe 39 lines here, so I have that data. And I'm going to copy first the geometry, paste it here. Actually, I don't need that, so remove. And now I need the unique ID. So sometimes you can do upload and merge if you know that your data has the exact same structure in both files. But because my files come from different sources, I'm going to do the manual way, and I'm just going to copy one by one, not one by one, but rather one column by one column, to show you how you can create your own mix and match quite easily. So if I paste this here, I already have one ID. And if I go to my regions, which I already have preloaded, I know that that is the ID that my original file with my data for the population had attached to each of the regions of my GeoJSON file. So just by doing that, I already have the full map that I showed you in the example. So just to go over that one more time, just very quickly, so the concepts land, you find the GeoJSON you need to add into your bigger file or any other base map that you're trying to create, and you can simply mix and match them as easily as copying and pasting the right fields into the target map, so to speak. And you can end up with a very advanced looking map, such as this one. But once again, you have all of that, all the resources in the slides ready for you. Okay, well, giving over to Vanessa so she can cover visualizing polling data.
Thank you very much. Okay. And last but not least, we're covering how to visualize polling data. So polling data refers to the information collected through surveys and interviews to gauge public opinion and also predict electoral outcomes. So they are typically conducted by polling organizations or research firms, and they play a crucial role in informing political strategies, shaping public discourse, and providing insights into the potential outcome of an election. And by visualizing this data, we can help to convey trends and patterns and relationships in the data, and also enable people to quickly grasp the overall picture of the public opinion. And again, you have several options to create a voting intention chart, which we'll step through now. So first of all, you have you can use our line bar pie template to create a voting intention chart like the one on the right, which compares parties in the UK again, and over time how they've gained and lost popularity. And also very nice for this chart here and for all your charts that you can add axis highlights to mark certain events that have influenced the polls, like here that the UK has left the EU, and then you can immediately see the impact it has had. And this is our just line bar pie template. And then another option is to use a line chart race, which is particularly good for visualizing the polling of volatile rises, because the animation gives you like almost a physical sense of the contest, and you can see how it goes up and down over time, and how the position changes, which for this example, it changes at the beginning and then it stays quite stable. But yeah, you can clearly see how the popularity of Joe Biden has changed over time, and you can always replay the chart. And yeah, it's just a very nice and interactive way to show how the polling has changed over time. And then another template is our gauge template, which is still quite recent. And you've probably seen the needle in election coverage before, especially by the New York Times. And it provides real-time updates on the probability of each candidate winning the election. And yeah, with our free gauge template, you can quickly create your own needle visualization you can have, like you can see here, a grid of charts, and you can have one gauge for each candidate and show the approval ratings from them. And we cover later as well briefly how you can update or how you can connect your chart to a live data source so it automatically updates. And then lastly, we have one more example, which is a bit more complex because it's using our scatter template. And for the other examples, we for the line chart and the line chart race, we've only shown the average of all the polls. But then we can also, in this example, show the individual results of the polls, like visualized as dots, and then the average visualized as a line for each party. So this chart here shows the support for different British political parties in the last 3 years. And as you can see, there's a line, and then that shows the overall average over time. If you would have a line chart, use our line chart template, then you would just have the line and not the dots. But then this one also shows all the individual polling results where you can see some outliers as well if you hover over them. And since this is a bit more of a complex example, we go through the steps needed in a bit more detail here. So first, what you need to do is to prep your data so it matches what the template needs. Just that you need to be aware that, or the first step you obviously need to do is to find the right data source and to have your data split up into individual polling results and then the average as well, which is something you would ideally, or you would do before importing your data into Flourish. But yeah, there are some things to keep in mind regarding your data structure. So as you can see here, you have quite a few columns that you need, and your data also needs to be in a long format. So and you have basically what you have in the end is that you have kind of need to think that you would create your charts, 2 different charts or like 2 different data sets. So one data set is for the individual polls or like the individual dots on the chart in the end, and the other one is just for the lines, and then you just copy and paste them underneath each other. So kind of every date you have in your data is repeated. So that's what makes the data quite long. And to just go through them step by step. So you have one column that shows the X values, which is the dates. So we want to have the dates on the X-axis, and then on the Y-axis, we want to have the polling outcome, so the value. And then the name, so the name for each row, each dot would be the party names. And we also can assign a column for the color, which again is the parties, because we want to have everything colored by our parties. And the 2 most important things, so this is the same if you create just a normal scatter plot, but the most important things to consider is the size. So that would be a column containing the sizes of the dots, and the series column. So this is the one here at the bottom, because in scatterplot, using the series column, you can connect dots with a line, and they need to have a unique name to connect the dots. But these 2 we go into more detail now as well. So first of all, the size column, because the size column will determine the size of your dots. And we want to have a combination of lines and dots, and we are assuming that we want our lines not to have any dots. So because it would be too busy if there are dots on the lines as well. So because of that, in our size column, all the rows that correspond to the lines need to have a size of 0, because we don't want there to be any dot on the line. And then, so these here are all the dates and all the polling results that are the average. So these have a size of 0. And then we have the same dates for different parties, and the outcome, which is the individual polls. And for this one, I've assigned a size of 20. You can also assign a size of 50, like whatever you preferred sizes. It just is that it's different. So one is 0 and the other one is a bigger size. This is the size of the actual dots. And then you need to do something very similar for the series columns. So the series column will connect your dots. But what we have to keep in mind is that we only want to connect some of the dots and not all of them, because the individual polls we don't want to connect, but the average we want to connect. So kind of for this template, you need to always think about like, okay, what do we actually want to do? So this is why for the individual points in your data, you leave the cells blank. So these are these here. So we see we have the size of 20, which was for the points. And then we just don't give it any name or anything. We just leave it blank, which means nothing will happen to the dots. They won't be connected by a line. And then for averages, for our lines, we need to have a unique name for each party in the data. So I just used line, so I know this is the line, and then just added the party name behind it. So it's not enough to then just have line, because then it would just connect all the dots that have line in them, but you want a different line for each party. So you need to have line and the party name. Or you could also just call it line 1, line 2, but it just needs to be a unique name. And then, yeah, if you follow these steps, your chart should be ready, and then you can, in the last step, customize it. So two things to keep in mind when customizing it is that you can change the opacity of the dots. So if you set them at 1, they would be very like in the foreground and overlap with the line. So it's kind of nice if you set it to an opacity below 0.5. Which, yeah, something like that. You can experiment with that until you're happy. And also another thing to make sure is that the minimum size is set to 0 as well. Because otherwise, if we set it to 5, then the dots on our lines will still show up. So just to keep in mind, this needs to be 0. And another thing is that you can set line width. So you can say how thick do I want my line to be, and also select that the line color matches your dots, so that here you have the same colors for the dots and the lines, and we can see they are like more opaque. And as well, we can use the filter at the top to filter out some lines, and then the lines and the dots both will disappear. So yeah, that was all about the scatter. And yeah, I will hand over to Mafia unless there are any questions about this.
Thanks, Vanessa. That's always mind-blowing to me, that one chart. It's amazing. Okay, peeps, so we're almost there. This is the formal last section of the webinar, and then maybe we can have more time for questions. But it's quite a fun one because we're gonna show you how to transform your charts with stories and scrollies. So in case you were not familiar with this term stories, it's just a really wonderful tool that we have at Flourish, where we can stitch charts together in this sort of presentation type format. And if I go through the arrows here, then I'm going to be visualizing, I'm going to be showing the different visualizations, different chart types as well, in one neat container. And I can do things like zooming into specific regions to highlight areas of a map, or I can go again into a completely different template, into a different map type, and benefit from the animation, and in this case, the 3D effects, to create these really nice transitions in between my slides. So this is something, oh, well, of course, and here's the chart that Vanessa just showed, and this is all completely interactive as well. And here you can add your captions to explain what is happening on the screen to your users. So this is something extremely powerful. It's a great mechanism to, for instance, replace dashboards, because they foster storytelling and explanation over exploration, and yet you're still able to interact with the charts and let your audience and your users explore the charts at their own pace. So the way you go about creating your own story is actually very simple. If I go back into my projects and I create new story, it's going to give you a complete blank container where you can choose between different visualizations. So if I go choose a visualization and, for instance, go in for election webinar, I have a copy of my chart right here, and I can duplicate that slide, for instance, and I'm still within the same chart type. And I can, as I explained earlier, zoom in. I can, once again, do that. And maybe I want to zoom in even further and perhaps have a pop-up. So I go here and maybe write slide 1, slide 2, and slide 3. And to get those concepts across, we would have a first state, then a second state, in this case where we're zooming in, and a third one where we're zooming even further in and we're highlighting a specific area. these three slides are the same visualization, the same chart type, but they don't have to be. I can add a different one. But luckily, I do have an example prep for you to show you. And this is what we're able to do. We're able to connect all these different charts, which are still interactive, into a single neat format. Elections, results, parliament chart, again, maps, what I just showed you, can go deep into it, maybe duplicate this further and potentially jump into a separate area. So maybe let's go here to California. And again, that transition would look something like this. From general version to one focus region to another focus region, and then to a separate chart altogether. And as I said, you can complement this in your captions however you want. You can add rich formatting like this and just tell your story in a more engaging way. You're also able to turn this into a scrolly just by clicking one single button, which is this scrolly button. And instead of having the captions and having to go through all the slides with the arrows, you would simply have to scroll. So if I go back to the beginning of my story, I would now have the caption overlaid on top of all my charts. And if I go through them, I can see that that is the case for all of them. Now, I export and republish that chart. And this is what that scrolly would look like. There we go. So my captions have been transformed into these little boxes that are overlaying on top of the charts. And as I scroll, I enact the change. So the action that I was doing with the click of the arrows, I'm simply doing by scrolling down on the screen. And this feature is available on the publisher plan and our enterprise plan. So people on our paid plans can enjoy from this pretty magical trick that we have in Flourish as an option. And of course, that all leads into pretty magical and pretty rich storytelling, which is what Flourish stands for. And that leads us to the very last section of this webinar. Vanessa?
Thank you. As a last section, we have a few extras. So one of them, what we've already mentioned before with the polling charts, is that you can always add annotations to your charts, which are perfect to draw attention to certain data points or give background and more context to what has happened. And we have a full blog just on annotations, so feel free to read that. And another thing that is especially nice for maps is that you can create customized pop-ups, and you can even show mini bar charts or embed charts in your pop-ups to give even more context as well. And there's a help doc on this where you can learn more on that. And thirdly, you can, or if you're on a premium plan, you can connect your charts to live data sources, which is perfect for automation and live updating results in Results Night. And because we have some time, I'll just very quickly show you how this would work. So here I have just prepared a spreadsheet that I've published, a Google Sheet, which just has the data for the Parliament chart. And then here instead, in the chart, instead of upload data, we can say import from URL, and then we would just copy and paste the link in there. It doesn't have to be a Google Sheet, it just needs to be any public link in the right format. And now we have our data here. Nothing has changed because it is the same, but what we can do is if I change this suddenly to only 100 seats, and then I click update now, this should have changed. Oh, we're in 2017, 2019. You can see that the seats have drastically decreased because there are less seats now. And this has immediately updated. So if you then publish your chart, you can take this box to automatically update data from your URL, and you can say it should be checked every hour, every half an hour, something like that. I think the minimum time between the updates is 5 minutes. So yeah, you can set the republishing interval and then in the live election night. If anything in your spreadsheet changes, then every few minutes this chart will automatically update as well, which yeah, leaves or like avoids you having to update your data manually or copy and paste it manually into the editor. So that just very quickly, because there have been some questions about this in the chat as well. And then we just recap what we've covered in the last hour. So first of all, check our election specific templates. For example, like we've covered the parliament chart template, the election results chart, and also the gauge template to cover elections. Then spot geographical patterns with maps. So explore Flourish mapping tools to bring your data to life and drive insights. And lastly, enhance your charts with stories and scrollies. And this is the best way to guide your audience through the data to enhance their understanding and also increase your chart's impact. So we just briefly cover what you might have missed since the last webinar, which was a month ago now. So we have published a few blogs. One of them was how to identify trends and patterns with data visualization, where we've covered key chart types as well. And this can be very useful for elections as well. So do take a look at that if you have some time. And some updates from our product side is that you can now add outlines around the bars, which always mirror the text color. And if you've noticed that you're duplicating your stories a lot, you can now include, or there's now an option to duplicate all the visualizations within a story if it's your own story. So you don't have to manually duplicate the charts as well. And then we have a change log where you can always check what else is new to always keep up to date. And then see you again in a month. Our next webinar will be on how to visualize sports data with Flourish, considering the upcoming Euros and then also the Olympics. And again, it will follow a similar format where we just cover lots of different templates and ways to bring your sports data to life with Flourish. It will be on the 11th of June. And there's a link here where you can sign up for our webinar communications if you aren't yet. So you will get a notification when you can reserve your spot for this webinar. Okay, and then just very briefly, these are all the resources that we have at Flourish. So we have a dedicated page just for elections. We have different blog posts on UK and the US. And then there's also a blog that's just about finding the right map type for your data. And we also had a webinar 1 year ago, also about elections. So if you want to, you can also have a look at that if you want to know even more about elections and using Flourish. And then, yeah, as always, just reach out to us for webinar-specific questions. There's our email and hello@Flourish Studio for everything else. Make sure to follow us on social media to always be up to date about anything that's happening. And yeah, thank you very much for joining. We hope to see you next time again. And like we said in the beginning, you get in a few days, you get the recording, so you can go through everything again if you want to like go into more detail or if you've missed something, and you also get access to the slides with all the links and the resources, so you can explore that in your own time.